John chapter 4, verses 4, 5, and following. And Jesus had to pass through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, wearied as he was from his journey, was sitting beside the well. It was about the 6th hour.
I get so thirsty making this trip out to Jacob's well. My mother and my sister ask me why I come in the middle of the day, in the heat of the day, to draw water. Why not come out at 5 o'clock like everyone else? I tell them it's because I like the time to be alone and I like having the well to myself. What I don't tell them is it's just too painful to be around the other women and their gossip. You see, Sychar's a relatively small city. I've lived here my whole life. So everyone knows everyone else's business. And for too long, I have been the source of the juiciest tidbits. Oh, that Rebecca, did you hear? Zachariah divorced her. What is that, husband number 4? Zachariah was husband number 5, but I don't dare correct them. Do you know why Zachariah divorced me? Because I burned his dinner 2 nights in a row. My mother warned me against my daydreaming. You just watch, Rebecca. You're going to choose an impatient husband who's going to divorce you because you have your head in the clouds. And she was right. Husbands 2, 3, and 5 all divorced me because I couldn't keep house to their liking. Oh, and husband number 3 thought I was too mouthy. Couldn't keep my womanly opinions to myself. But it wasn't always like that. Joseph, my first husband, he was good to me. He didn't mind that I occasionally burnt supper or forgot to draw water for the mules. We were married quite young, and we were happy together. But before I could bear him a child, he died, beaten to death by robbers as he traveled to Jericho to sell his wool. My 4th husband was old when I met him, and I should have known better, but I was devastated when his heart gave out just a year after we were married. The women don't know any of this. They just count the husbands and look at me with suspicion, especially if they have son of marrying age. Perhaps they think I'm bad luck. Plus, I think the word has gotten out about Reuben. Reuben. You know, I think I really love him. Love him like I love Joseph. He's a daydreamer like me, doesn't mind a dirty house or burnt bread. We have the most interesting conversations together. But Reuben doesn't want to get married, at least not yet. He doesn't think his parents would approve and give him money for my dowry, so he tells me that he's saving all his earnings and he will marry me someday when he can afford it. But for now, why not live as husband and wife? Why wait? Why wait indeed? We tried to keep our relationship a secret, but really, how does anyone keep a secret in our little town? That's the real reason why I come to the well at noontime, why I walk 2 miles in the heat of the day to draw water, because I don't want to face the women. Don't want to overhear their tattling tongues, don't want to endure their suspicious gaze. I doubt they'd talk with me even if I came to draw water later in the day. Of course, I'm not always alone. Sometimes a traveler passing through will stop to draw water. It's not easy to find living water in this part of Samaria. And living water, water that flows in rivers or underground springs, tastes so much better than the rainwater that collects in town. Living water is fresh, it's cool, it's clean, and it never runs out. Our forefather Jacob built this well centuries ago, and the well has never run dry, not once. So as I was saying, I run into strangers sometimes sitting by the well, but they're almost always men, and they never talk with me. It's incredibly scandalous for a man to talk to a woman who isn't his wife. In fact, men aren't really even supposed to talk to their wives. So, for the most part, I've been able to keep to myself. That is, until I met the rabbi. It was an unusually hot day, and as I walked toward the well, I passed a group of men walking toward the town. They looked like the disciples of a rabbi, all very young and eager. I wondered if they knew where they were going, but I didn't bother to ask them because they looked like Jews. And you should know that Jews never talk with Samaritans, as if we'd want them to, the way they act so superior around us, as if we were less than human. So I guess I wasn't too surprised when I saw a man sitting by the well. I figured he must be the rabbi. I was a little surprised that he and his disciples were here at all. Jews usually go out of their way to avoid Samaria when they're traveling from Judea to Galilee. The easiest way between the two is through Samaria, but you should also know that Jews view us Samaritans as unclean and don't want to risk coming into contact with us. So I figured this holy rabbi wouldn't want to have anything to do with me, a Samaritan woman. But as I drew my water, he asked me for a drink. It took me several seconds to comprehend that he was talking to me. I was so surprised I couldn't help but talk back. How is it that you, a Jew, would ask me, a Samaritan woman, for a drink? What the rabbi said next was even more shocking. He told me that if I knew who was asking, I would ask him, and he would give me living water. Well, now I was just plain confused. Where was he going to get this living water? Clearly, he had no bucket, no way of drawing the living water from the spring. I thought maybe he was insulting our forefather Jacob in this well, trying to show that even in water, he, a Jew, was superior. But then the rabbi said that anyone who drank water from this well would be thirsty again. And he's right. I have to come back every day to the well to draw water. By the time I get here, I'm terribly thirsty. The water quenches my thirst for a time, but by the time I'm home, I'm thirsty again. The rabbi then said that the water he offered would become a spring inside of me, welling up to eternal life. Oh, well, now that was a promise that sounded good to me. Never to be thirsty again. I wouldn't have to keep coming back to the well at midday because I wouldn't have to come at all. I'd have all the water I'd need at my fingertips, literally. So I asked him for it, told him I was tired of being thirsty and coming to the well every day. And just when I thought he was going to give me what I asked for, he changed the subject, told me to go call my husband. Now, what was I supposed to say to that? Could I bring him Reuben? If he knew I was living with Reuben, would he withdraw his offer? Surely a holy rabbi would not want to be associated with me if he knew this about me. So I fudged the truth a little. I said to him, I have no husband. The rabbi looked me in the eyes, and his eyes were kind, not hard or bitter or judgmental. As he looked, it was as if he could see me, my whole story, my longings, my dashed hopes, my burnt meals and daydreams. He said, what you've said is right. You've had 5 husbands, and the man you're living with now is not your husband. How could he know that? A stranger passing through, a Jew who won't associate with Samaritans, how could he possibly know that? Could he be the prophet promised by Moses in our holy scriptures? Well, I wanted to test him to see if he was for real, so I asked him a question that had been bothering me for years. You see, from the time of Moses, my people have been worshiping on Mount Gerizim, which is very close to my home. But the Jews say that the one holy place, the only place where God dwells, is Mount Zion, Jerusalem. So I asked him, where is the proper place to worship? The rabbi was clearly Jewish. He did say that he and his people worshiped what they knew, while we Samaritans worshiped what we did not know. But then he said there was coming a time when we would all worship the Father. I assume he must have meant God, in neither place. No, the place wouldn't matter. Instead, all true worshipers would worship the Father in spirit and in truth. In the rabbi's words, I could sense him extending an invitation to me to become one of those who worshiped in spirit and in truth. Me? A Samaritan woman living with a man who wasn't her husband? Could I be a true worshiper of God? I don't know if what I said next came from a place of belief or suspicion, but I blurted out, I know that when Messiah comes, he will tell us all things. And then the rabbi said the most radical thing of all. I, who speak to you, am he. The Messiah. Before I had the chance to collect my thoughts, to ask him more questions, the disciples showed back up with food in hand. I could hear them talking as they approached, but they stopped the moment they saw me. The familiar, suspicious gaze hurt me more than it had ever hurt before. Who did they think I was, a prostitute? It was their rabbi who talked to me first, not I to him. My head was swirling with embarrassment, with indignation, but more than that, with this desire to tell my neighbors about this teacher, this Messiah. So without thinking about it, I left my bucket and ran back to the city. The first person I came across was Elizabeth. Oh, Elizabeth, you must come to the well. There's this man who told me everything I ever did. Could he be the Messiah? Elizabeth must have sensed something different in my voice because she didn't question me, but immediately ran home to find her husband. Everyone I met, I grabbed and said, you must come to the well. The Messiah is here. Before too long, the whole city was abuzz. A whole number of people followed me back to the well, and they met the rabbi for themselves. They heard him promise living water, and they believed him. We asked the rabbi and his disciples to stay, and they stayed for 2 whole days. And we all believed that this man named Jesus, was the Savior of the world. For so long, I was ashamed of my story, ashamed of the rejection, the heartbreak, the scandal. But then here comes this teacher who was so much more than a teacher, and he took my story and made it into something beautiful. No longer was I known as Rebecca, the woman who'd had 5 husbands, but as Rebecca, the one who'd introduced our town to the Messiah. And it all happened because I decided to come to the well at noonday, and he happened to stop there on his way to Galilee. Jesus' story collided with my own, and everything changed. So what's your story? What's your story? Are you thirsty for something more? Then you've got to meet the teacher. His name is Jesus. He'll take your whole story, everything about you, and turn it into something new. And when Jesus' story meets your own, believe me, you're gonna want to share it.